Welcome to this special edition of Frequency Matters, the RF and Microwave Update Series. I'm Pat Hindle, and I'm here with my special guest, Chris Pearson, President of 5G Americas. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here.
5G Americas is an industry trade organization composed of leading telecommunications service providers and manufacturers. The organization's mission is to facilitate and advocate for the advancement and transformation of LTE, 5G, and beyond throughout the Americas. Chris, how have wireless cellular networks held up during this pandemic lockdown?
Actually, the mobile wireless networks have done a great job in handling the extra traffic and working really well with the various new applications and services that people are using during the COVID-19 crisis. Operators are also really moving forward robustly with their 5G deployments. So everything is going well. Obviously, our hearts and minds and thoughts go out to all the first responders out there and also all the essential workers. But yeah, things in our networks are doing quite well.
In what ways can 5G stimulate new business investment and create services?
5G is a real opportunity when you look at the families of use cases. And those families of use cases could be three of them: enhanced mobile broadband family, the massive IoT or massive Internet of Things, and finally the ultra reliable and low latency communications family of use cases. And each of those really stimulates the capabilities for innovation. Before, we really had some limitations when you start to think about our technology because of the speeds and so forth. And a lot of people around the world, as well as the United States, can start thinking about more applications and services without those limitations that we might have had when you started to think of speeds or latency or number of sensors or devices connected. So there's a lot of opportunity for innovation when you look at 5G.
How does 5G enable other technologies and industries?
5G is going to be really a huge technology enabler, and it's going to be an enabler that is going to be married with many other technologies that's going to help us all in our society as far as connectivity. And as is in this COVID-19 crisis, connectivity is king. Everyone needs connectivity, whether it's for this what we're doing here today, or really any part of the work from home status quo. So really the opportunity is to work with things like, cloud capabilities and cloud computing, edge network technology, artificial intelligence, and really even what's called network slicing, which is one of the capabilities and features of 5G from our standard. So put them all together, what you find is it's a recipe for our key ingredients for a lot of innovative services, a lot of innovative capabilities, and they really enable each other. And 5G is part of that enabler, but also the glue that can hold everything together, because we want to be able to connect wherever we go and wherever we work, wherever we play.
What is the impact of a lack of mid-band spectrum on the 5G networks?
The lack of mid-band spectrum for 5G in the United States is a big challenge for the United States. We are a leader in the United States for millimeter wave spectrum. So that means that the high band spectrum, we've identified it, we've allocated it, we've auctioned it off, we've allowed private transaction, and there's a lot of it in the hands of our mobile operators or mobile wireless industry. Our challenge has been in mid-band because we have a lot of federal incumbent users that most other countries around the world don't have. And so it's a long process to get the correct roadmap and get that spectrum out to the US. And it is a challenge. You look at other countries like Japan, Korea, and China, they are allocating not just millimeter wave, but they are allocating large swaths of mid-band spectrum in the 3.5 range. And sometimes this is like 80 to 100 or even more, 100 megahertz or more spectrum to each operator. So it is a challenge for the US to try to move forward and work toward a goal of more mid-band spectrum for the industry.
What discussions around mid-band spectrum are happening in Washington, D.C. then?
Well, there's a lot going on, but the processes take quite a while. As everyone might be aware, there is a CBRS, which is shared spectrum auction expected, depending on the COVID-19 crisis, at the end of July. And that's for shared spectrum at 3550 to 3700. Some of that, there's only part of that, but that would be used for licensed users or tier 1 users. So there are some challenges with that spectrum with power recommendations or requirements and things like that. That second area that's being worked on is C-band satellite spectrum, which is the 3.7 to 4.2 spectrum. And that spectrum, there's a proposal from the FCC to move forward with condensing those satellite providers into a higher range and then making about 280 to 300 megahertz available for the mobile wireless industry in the long term. And that right now is expected to have legal challenges. So there are some, with legal challenges that possible that it could delay that. So then you end up with what's called the 3100 to 3550 chunk of spectrum. And that's where the 5G Americas has said we really need to focus on getting a clear roadmap to get that spectrum available. There was what's called a Mobile Now Act passed in 2018 that said NTIA, which manages the federal spectrum, needs to put forth a report about that spectrum and the capabilities to utilize that spectrum for the mobile wireless industry. We saw the first part of that report, which was the top tier, 3450 to 3550, and that amount of spectrum is 100 megahertz. That's great. But we expect the second part of that report in the next few months that would really describe the entire possibilities of 3100 to 3550. And 5G Americas is advocating that that spectrum be utilized for the mobile wireless industry. So a lot going on, but long processes, some legal battles, and then some spectrum that really isn't perfect for 5G at this time.
What could happen to the U.S. competitiveness without quick action in the mid-band spectrum?
The U.S. has always been great at stepping up to the plate and being a leader in technology, a leader in wireless, a leader in innovation, a leader in economics, in the economy. But it would just be a bigger challenge for the U.S. to continue leadership in mobile wireless communications without a large chunk of mid-band spectrum. Most of these countries, like Japan, Korea, China, and even others in Europe, they're putting forth a large swaths of spectrum in mid-band because it's a sweet spot. It provides capacity and it provides coverage. And for the US not to have large swaths, it would make it more challenging for us to continue our leadership. Most of these countries aren't just looking at 5G as a technology, they're looking at 5G as a way to improve their societies, whether it's education, healthcare, government, or smart cities. So this is a real opportunity if we can get our mid-band spectrum out in the market, into the U.S. mobile wireless carriers, but it would just make that leadership more challenging if we don't.
Chris, thank you very much for joining me today and providing insight into the current 5G market in the Americas. We really appreciate all the work that 5G Americas does to advocate for the wireless industry. We thank everybody for listening, and we hope that you'll join us again for Frequency Matters.